recording. So like today I'm going to record. Typically the notes will be, I thought it was 12:03. I think that's wrong. Yeah, I don't know. The bells are like all a little weird today, but so typically the notes will be online early in the day. So if you're ever absent or have to go virtual, what I'll typically do is upload the notes and the videos each day. So I don't do live Google Meets. And the reason for that is with math, everyone kind of works at their own pace. So like if I was live and you're like online, you're like, wait a minute, or your computer's lagging or something, the videos allow you to pause and like rewind and skip maybe. Like if you're like, oh, I got that next example, I can skip over that. That allows that to happen. If you ever end up having to go virtual, those guys online who are virtual, you can always let me know and we can set up a Google Meet. If you're like, I'm just not getting this lesson, let's figure it out and talk. Those of you guys in person, obviously, you can always come to get help during AR. And you can stop me in class. Like, it's not like I'm a robot that doesn't stop talking. So feel free to let me know if you guys have questions if you're live here. So what happens is those people who are at home, or if you end up having to be at home ever, there's going to be videos online that get uploaded each day. And then you take the notes at home, and then there's a homework assignment posted. And that'll be online for you guys as well. And I always post the book pages. So if you guys are at home and you forgot to bring your book home, or you don't even want to take a textbook, I'll always post the pages electronically, so you don't have to take the big clunky book if you don't want to. So I'll go into more detail with that, but I just wanted to kind of lay the idea down with the videos. So our notes, what we're going to do each day in class is typically we'll take some form of notes. I'll apologize ahead of time. Our first note sheet is a little on the long side. But it's just a lot of vocab that we're going to get used to. I put the notes always on, so when I give you guys notes, you don't have to take them in your notebook. I give them on 3-hole punch paper, and you kind of just fill in as we go. Now, if you're at home and you don't have a printer, you might just have to do them on loose leaf. But if you're in person, I'll always print these for you, but I will upload like the blank ones online. So if you have a printer at home, you might want to print them. I know in the past my students who've had me before like these, and they like that you can just kind of fill them in as we go. So the fact that they're 3-hole punch would be great to have a binder. So you can kind of tuck them in there so that when we're testing or taking an exam in May, that you're able to recall what we learned early in the year. Because you won't remember everything I say. I know it's hard to believe, but might not. I'm gonna pass one back here. So there's a couple of warm-up questions here. So if you want to take a minute to look at those, there's like 3 warm-up questions. So kind of a, what do you know about geometry? And then some solving equation ones there. So if you guys want to take a minute to look at those 3 problems, we can talk as a class about them in a little bit. So what do you think of when you hear the word geometry, first of all? And then there's a couple of equations that I want you guys to see if you remember how to solve something like this. So you're like, hey, we're in geometry, why are we doing algebra? A lot of algebra comes up in geometry, especially problems like these two. So we'll talk about those in a minute. If you remember how to do it, if not, you can wait for us to take the notes together. Give you a few more minutes. What do you guys think of when you hear the word geometry, or what has someone told you about it? You probably know a few things. What do you think of? What did you guys write down? What do you guys think? What do you got, Izzy?
I think of shapes, pi, and square rooting.
Shapes, you said pi?
Yeah.
And I think she means this pi, not like apple pie. And then like square roots. I like in all the time I've taught this, I don't know that everyone's mentioned square roots before, and actually it's something that is so important, and probably like my semester exam that my students just took, they probably use square roots probably on a third of the questions. So yeah, square roots come up a lot in geometry. So shapes, sorry. And a lot of times people think geometry just shapes. I a lot of times will have students say, well, I didn't like algebra, I like shapes. And the problem is that algebra shows up in those shapes. So even if you didn't like algebra, algebra does come up again. Maybe not to the point that we got when you guys were actually taking algebra the first time, but it gets definitely is used again in geometry. Anything else? Maybe read off of some of yours. You said formulas. We got shapes. Angles are good. Formulas are good. There's lots of formulas in geometry. Angles, definitely a huge part of it. We use angles quite a bit. What do you got? No, thanks. Measurements, so I'm going to ignore your one comment. What else we got? Anyone else? Yeah. Circumference, so like circles, to talk about circles. I think lots of different things about circles. Circumference is just one of those things. Anything else, you guys? And circles is a shape, so. I don't know if, like, at some point, I feel like when I tell people about geometry, that, like, if I say to someone I'm a geometry teacher, they're like, oh, I hate proofs. So you might, like, your parents maybe even would say something like that, like that's something they have, like, PTSD about from geometry. So we do some proofs. However, it's maybe not to the point where it's going to be totally painful, but we do have to prove things. So geometry, a lot of times, is a lot about explaining what you're doing. So like when we solve these problems down here, eventually we're going to have to kind of explain why we're able to do those. Like why we're able to solve it the way we do. So geometry is probably more explaining than you'd probably like. It's also a ton of vocabulary. So almost every chapter we're going to make a chart that's going to have a bunch of vocabulary. So if you're not great with vocab, you might want to find ways to kind of study that. So if it means flashcards, there's lots of different apps with flashcards. So today alone, I think we're going to have probably about 10 vocab words, and that's just the very first section of this chapter. So, or first couple sections. So just that you guys know, vocab is a huge part of it. And I always say it's kind of like we're learning a new language. So there's a lot of words we use in geometry that you don't just use like in your everyday life. Like I don't go around talking about congruence like with my friends or, like line segments. So, all right, so we're going to talk about the solving equations. So again, we'll do a lot of algebra this year, and so I'll be reviewing algebra with you guys and kind of just assuming that you guys learned it, but not expecting you to be like all stars at it if it's something that's a more complicated algebra idea. So in example 1, here, what'd you do first? What was your first step, you guys? Anyone remember how to start that? Yeah. Okay, so you moved the 6 over. So she got that 6 away from the x. So she moved this over to the other side. When she's talking about sides, it's kind of like this equation has 2 sides of it. So she's moving it to the other side of the equal sign. And it's okay if you're a little rusty, like if you're like, oh, I haven't done this since last May, that's okay. I'm kind of all in that same situation. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. So feel free to write these down with us as we go here. What do you guys want to do next? Yeah, let's put that 5 and 3x, the negative 5 and the 3x together. So they're like terms, so we can put those together. So 3 minus 5 is a negative 2x. So I was able to combine those. And then finally, to get my x alone, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so we're going to divide each side by negative 2. And so x is 3. And I'm assuming you guys are like, oh yeah, I recall that, probably a while ago. And part of it is a while ago also, you were also virtual last spring, so it's probably been a while since you've done this in person. So, so x is 3. So it's okay if it's a little bit rusty. We'll keep kind of trying to review it as we go here. Again, if it helps, 2 sides of the equation, so there's kind of a different side. There's 2 parts here. This next one, number 2, what do you guys want to do first? Subtract 9, so you move the 9 away. Okay. And just so if you guys know, if you did something different first, that's not the only thing you could have done first, just so you guys know, so that this works, but if you chose to do something different, it's probably right as well. So, so 2x equals, and this is x, and then negative 7, negative 9, it's more negative, so a negative 16. What are we going to do next? What'd you do? You might have done it a step before. How'd you get this over there? Yes, you did. Just took it away, that's it. So, so he moved this over to the other side. So we have 1x, so I'm going to take it away. And sometimes, again, it's just hard knowing how to explain what you did. But he's like, I just took it away. That seems obvious. Well, that's all we're asking for here. I'm not asking for this big, long explanation. So 2x minus 1x is just going to be a single x. Or just a 1 here. You don't need it. And then this is gone. So noticing the difference here, there's 2 different things happening here. This one I get to combine my like terms here because they're on one side of the equal sign. Whereas over here I had to move this over. So that's a different step. So there's kind of 2 different things happening in these 2. These are kind of our 2 different kind of basic solving algebra equations. So I want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with those. Okay? So if that's still a struggle for you, we'll definitely keep reviewing it. So don't freak out and think you need to drop the class or anything. We'll definitely work through things. And if it's too easy for you, then I promise you it'll get tougher. So hang in there. All right, so like I said, lots of vocabulary today. And you guys will be taking quite a bit of notes. I know I'm jumping right into this, but I promise about halfway through we'll have like a little bit of a break. I try to do that every class where I break up the notes into 2 parts, so you're not just writing and listening to me talk the whole time. So definitely give you guys a break. So this first example here, this is point A. So a dot on the paper is point A. It's a specific location on our paper or in our, in this problem. You want to take notes with us because you won't remember everything I say. So our specific location has no shape or size. So if that's point A, it's just a spot on the paper. It doesn't have like a little star shape to it. It doesn't have like something I could find the area of. It's just a point. It's a dot, as little as you can make it. That's our point. The way we would name that, we would call this point A. It's a really original name. That's the name of that location. Now when I name it, I have to be specific though about how I name it. So there's like really specific rules about how we name different things in geometry. So it has to be a capital letter, and it's like a capital, like printed letter. Just like when I write your guys' names out, like I write Jack's name with a capital J. I wouldn't write lowercase j. It's a notation we're all used to. Because when you have Jack with a lowercase a, then it ends up being, or lowercase j, it actually can be like a verb, or it can be a noun, like it can be something other than his name. So we use a capital letter for our point A. And this is just some getting used to. Again, it's kind of like a different language that we have to get comfortable with the notation for. So that's why we want to make sure we take good notes here. All right, the next thing is a line, and this is our example of our line here. So what do you notice about this line here? Tell me something that you notice, like how you describe it to someone. Like if someone was just hearing us talk about it, how would you explain what it looks like? Like, is it, yeah. It's straight, very good. That's a huge one, because if I was trying to explain to someone that couldn't see this, telling them it was straight would be really, really important, because it's clearly a straight line. So it's straight. So that means a line isn't like a curve, it's not like a wavy, it's not like a wave. It's not a circle, it's straight. Anything else? What's that? There's points on the line. So there's these 2 points on the line. And we'll get to those when we talk about the name. So those 2 points are on the line, and we'll talk about that with the name. What are those little arrows? What do you think those mean on the ends? Keeps going on forever. So it's never ending in both directions. Never ending in both directions. Goes on forever. So we want to be really technical. I actually can't really draw a complete line, because that line should go on forever. We could keep drawing that line and keep going, and it really shouldn't ever stop. But the arrows are kind of like when you write dot, 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 that I just keep going. So the way we name it is, getting back to what Avery said, was the fact that we have these points. So this one is named point or line PQ because it goes through those 2 points. Now we can get crazy and also call it QP. And so we have to use those 2 points. So you need to use both points. So either one is fine. But there's also like a nickname. So there's a short name for this as well. So there's this little cursive, it's supposed to be like a little italicized M there, that we want to call it by its nickname. So this is kind of a nickname or a short name for it. But M is not a point, so that's important to be aware of, that M actually isn't a point in that case. So we call that line M as well. So those are all three names that we could use for this line. All right, the next one is a plane, and not like an airplane. It's plane like, it's spelled the same way, but it's not an airplane. It's basically like, if you could picture this as this flat surface that just goes on forever. So like this wall, if this kept going on forever, it would be considered a plane. The floor is a plane. If the earth was flat, we would consider that a plane. I can get into a whole debate about that, but so it's a flat surface that extends forever in all directions. It's kind of weird to draw it because you can't really draw that going on forever. Now this one we don't have a special symbol for, like the line, we had the little line with the arrows on the top. A plane doesn't have a special symbol. So we just call this plane, and we're going to use 3 letters this time. B, C, D. So you need 3 letters or 3 points. Or we can call it with its nickname. This has a nickname of plane K, because there's a little K in the corner that's not a point. And we'll do one more vocab word before we'll take a little notes break. It's not going to be a super long break, but we'll take a little one here. So line segment is our next vocab word. That's on your sheet, right? I had added it by hand in mine, but a line segment. So if we have a line up there, what do you think a line segment is? Stops. So it actually has 2 endpoints, so it doesn't go on forever, so it stops. So it's still straight, but it has 2 endpoints. And I should have drawn something, but I realized I don't have one here. So this would be segment JK. Or KJ. So it has a definite stopping point. All right, so just so that we understand like how particular we need to be with these names, I think we're just going to do a little bit of practice with this. So if you guys, like this half of the room, if you guys want to go grab, there's whiteboards back there. And markers, and then you probably want to grab a Kleenex as an eraser. I'll grab these. Or you can use one of the rags. I just want to get enough. Make sure your marker's working. If it's not, you can always grab a new one and throw the one out if it's really bad. whiteboards are kind of one of my favorite go-to like break in our lesson, and I know it's not a complete break because you're still going to do some math, but it changes up things. It just like, so we're not doing the same thing all hour. So whiteboards come up quite a bit where we'll use these. And again, if you ever get a bad marker that's totally dead, just throw it out and grab a new one. You don't have to. I hate when I go back into the box and they're dead. So what I want to do is just practice naming some of these items so that you're just kind of comfortable with it. And we might do a little bit of algebra just to see kind of what you guys remember and what you don't. So if you guys could name, oops, if I could spell. So name this object. So on your board, you're going to write what the name of that would be. Well, like a specific name. So like if I was calling you not just student, I wanted to name you. So more specific. So like give it a name. So I would know which one you're talking about. You got it. You're just missing something from yours though. What else do you need on there? Yep, and you don't need the words at all. Like I would know that the other part is enough. So I want a more specific name. So look at the way we named it here. You don't need the little dots. Yep, you got it. Yep, that's it. You don't need the words. Like the bright would be enough, but yeah, that's good. Look at how you named it on your paper. Did you write it down? Yep, that's all we need. Yep, and yeah, you don't even really need that. Yep, so just make sure, only thing is, did you write it on here? Yeah. So make sure you put the little line with the arrows on the top. So kind of like going back to our notes here. So this is why you guys take notes, because obviously you don't remember everything I say. You don't remember the things I said 10 minutes ago. So this line, this is the way we name this line. We use the little line with the arrows on the top. Sorry, move that up. So, and we can call it PQ or QP, but we have the little line with the arrows on the top, and that's enough. We don't even have to say it's a line. I would know, and people who speak geometry would know that that means that's a line. So in this case, we can call this either XY or YX. For you guys put some dots there, we don't need those. Not that it's wrong, but it's kind of overkill, or we don't want to like say too much, or I just want you guys to be comfortable with the fact that you can use that and kind of address that there. Okay? All right, again, looking at specifically how I asked you guys to name them based off of what we wrote down. So we don't have as many as I thought. So let me be tricky here and see if this throws you guys. I want you to name the longest segment up there. So name the longest segment. Because there's actually more than one segment there. I want the longest one. Yep, you got it. Yep. Now this time you don't need the dots though. Yep. Yeah. The no arrows this time. Oh, yeah. Okay, maybe the dots, but yeah. Yep. So now you should only need 2 letters for this one. So the longest segment would be from here to here. That'd be the longest. So we just call that AC. Kind of call it CA. And it's just a line over the top. So again, we don't need dots in this one. We don't want arrows because it's not a line. It's just a segment. So segment AC or CA. This one. Yeah. There could be 2 different names, yep. And you do want, this time you do want to say that word there. So just that. This this one requires a little bit, yep, that works. Yep, that works. Yep. Yep. Yep, that works. Yes. I have it already. So this one has two different names you could use. So you could either call it the three letters, XOG, and the order you put them in doesn't really matter. Or you could just use that single cursive nickname. So that's also acceptable. So either one would be fine in this case. I would know which plane you're talking about. The order you put the letters in don't matter as long as you have three. Okay? So why don't I kind of flip this on you guys? Why don't you guys now, so if I give you, I want you to draw this. Can you draw that for me? Draw what that would look like as a picture. Yep. Yep. Yeah, you got it. Yes. Yes. Yep. 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 You don't need to be an artist. Yes. Yes. Yep. So yeah, no art degree needed here. So this would be our line now this time, and everybody did that correctly, where they had it be extended a line through those 2 points. So through RL, and now you could have them flipped if you wanted. They could be really close together, they could be really far apart. It doesn't matter as long as those 2 points are part of our line. Okay? I think we're gonna stop with the whiteboards for right now. Why don't we just set them aside for right now? And just not use them for a little bit, go back to notes, and we'll come back to them a little bit later, I think. A bunch of more vocab here. See how you guys do on this. So, like in English class, at some point, you probably learned that the word like co, or like part of the word co, means something. So like when I say I am cooperating with someone, or they're a co-worker, there's a reason why I add that CO into the front of the word, co-worker. There's something that matters about that. So what do you think collinear means? Any thoughts? So if I say someone's my coworker, what does that mean about them? You work together. So if I say something's collinear, it has the word line in it. Any thoughts? So they're together, but they're on the same line. So that's kind of how that breaks down a little bit. So points that are on the same line. On the same line. So for example, collinear points would be like these 4 points all on the same line. So P, W, X, and Y are considered collinear. They're all on the same line. So Jack, Mackenzie, Grant, they're collinear students. They're all in that same row. So what do you think non-collinear then means? What's it? Not on the same line. So I know we're getting really crazy, deep here. Not on the same line. So in this case, so if I'm talking about these 3 guys, I say, hey, this row, go get whiteboards. And Jillian gets up and goes. I'll be like, no, you're not in that line. She's not collinear with them. She's breaking the rules there. So who would be breaking the rules in this case? Who's not on the same line as those? Yep. T would be not on the same line as those. So T is non-collinear with those ones above. with those. T is non-collinear with those. Anything else that's non-collinear? Z as well. Now this next one, the idea with a plane is sometimes kind of confusing because we're trying to describe something that's supposed to be two-dimensional or three-dimensional, and we're drawing it in a single dimension. So what this is looking like is, so if this is my plane, so this is that, point T in this case is supposed to be like hovering above it. So like T is up above. So hopefully that makes sense. So sometimes with these drawings, it's kind of hard to visualize what's going on, but this point T is supposed to be kind of, or line T, X is supposed to be kind of dropping through that. So when we talk about coplanar, just change colors again. Coplanar, collinear is on the same line. What's coplanar? Same plane, yep. So points on the same plane. So all those points kind of in that gray section are all supposed to be on that same plane. So anything in this like kind of shaded area, so all those four that we just had, and now Z is coplanar with those. So all of these are on that same plane. So which one's non-coplanar then? Who's our outlier in this case? T would be not on that same plane. Tell you a story of my first day of teaching. So like I was 22 years old when I first started teaching, and I went to school the first day all excited, like save the world, you know, everyone's gonna love math because I'm their teacher, and I was so excited. And I come the first day, this just reminded me of this, because the coplanar. All the kids are sitting in their desks, and one boy like sat on his desk. Like he was sitting like on top of it, and I was like, you need to sit in your desk, you know, like cute little like teachers all excited their first day. And the boy would not sit in his desk. Like he like was sitting on it. He was so naughty. I'll never forget him. And it reminds me of non-coplanar, kind of like you guys are all in the same spot, and then there's like one person like just parked on top of his desk. So, like, and they never taught us that in teacher school, like what to do with the kid that like literally won't sit in his desk. So I'll never forget him. So that was 19 years ago, and I still remember the kid's first and last name and like what class he was in, because I was like so traumatized by my non-coplanar student that's just like in a whole different spot. So point T hovering up over there above the whole plane is not in that same plane. So again, if I'm talking about this, we're here and it's like sticking up over here. So if we're talking about this wall, something on that wall would be non-coplanar with it. All right, so we'll talk about intersections here. So the intersection is exactly like what it sounds like. You drive through intersections all the time. There's usually a stop sign at them. Intersection is the set of points where two things come together. So like the corner, there's one corner, or like there, you can consider it to be one corner or maybe multiple corners depending on how you're thinking about it. So it's the set of points, or it could just be a point, where two geometric figures have it in common. Set of points, I'm going to take out the where, sorry. That two geometric figures have in common. points that two geometric figures have in common. I'll show you guys what I mean here. So these two lines intersect at that particular point B. So B is the point of intersection, or that intersection of those two lines. So two lines intersect at a point. So we'd say AB and BC intersect at what point? Where's their point of intersection? B. Now we're also going to talk about how planes intersect, and that's a little more confusing. And again, we're not talking about airplanes, because if airplanes intersect, that means they crashed, and we don't want that to happen. So no crashing of airplanes here. So planes intersecting. So here's my little visual for you guys. So it's almost like I'm doing a magic trick here. My pink plane and my white plane. And have them intersect each other, I should use thicker paper. But they intersect. And how do they intersect? Like, what do they form when they intersect?
A plus sign.
A plus sign. Where would I put the glue? What's that? So like, you said on that angle. What would the glue look like? What kind of shape would that look like when I put the glue down there? A line. So that's what I was trying to get at. So if I go along this line, I put glue there along that line, two planes intersect to form a line. So all the way across the middle of those planes is this line. So two lines intersect at a point, two planes intersect at a particular line. So two planes intersect to form a line. So kind of like the walls coming together, like the corner of the two walls, like where I'd put like the glue, or what would hold that together would be that line in that corner. All right, we're gonna look at the next two examples and then we'll take another notes break here. All right, so it tells me YP lies in plane B and contains point C but doesn't contain point H. That sounds like a tongue twister all on its own. So line YP lies in plane B, and then we'll say that plane YP contains point C. So this is the first part of it, but H is not on that line. So we want to draw a picture of what this would look like. So we're going to kind of just sketch this. And again, I'm not expecting you guys to have the most amazing drawings ever. I mean, you know, like it better look like a line. Like you don't need like a ruler or something like that to draw it. It's just as long as it looks like you were trying to draw something straight. Hopefully it looks somewhat straight. So YP lies in plane B and contains point C, but does not contain point H. How do we draw a plane? What does a plane look like? How have we drawn it so far? Kind of like this goofy rectangle looking thing. So I'm going to draw that plane. do I have a name for it? What's the name? What's it? B. Little cursive B here. So I'm gonna do my little line, or my cursive B is my plain B. So YP lies in plain B. What do you think that means? It's a line on that plane. So I want to make sure I draw it so it looks like it's on the plane. So I wouldn't draw it over here. I wouldn't draw it going way off. I'm just going to draw it on the plane. And I'm going to call it YP. Bless you. And you're like, oh no, my line's going the other way. That's okay. As long as it's on the plane, you're fine. It contains point C. So what do you think that means? C is on the line. So throw C on there. And it's fine to have point C on there. It could be anywhere, as long as it's on that line. But does not contain point H. So where does H need to go? Somewhere else. So, choose your own drawing here, but the gist of it is that I could look at that and agree that that looks similar to my drawing somehow, that you're kind of getting the same thing across. And again, no art degree needed here. So, all right, see if you guys can draw this. So lines Q and F intersect at point Z in plane U. See if you guys can draw what this would look like. So, what'd you draw first? Do you draw the lines first? Plane. Probably draw the plane first, so I know what I have to fit this in. So plane. And do they tell us the name of the plane? U. Okay, so we have U. Q and F, lines Q and F intersect at point Z, so they have to be lines. So that means they have to have the arrows and they have to intersect. Now when they have a little cursive Q and F, what does that mean? What's that? That's the line, and so where does that go? Where did you put that? Kind of somewhere near it. It's not a point, so Q and F aren't points. So that's important to note, because Q, if they were capital, then they could be points, so that's gonna be Q there, and then this little cursive F there. So it's just kind of like off to the side, it's that nickname. And then what else do I have to include? Z's in the center, where they intersect. Right? So just trying to get used to the fact that, what's points and what's not. All right, so why don't we actually pause for a little bit? I'm going to stop the first video because I don't like having the videos too